Ever get that feeling? Like when an old song or maybe a familiar scent just kind of sends you hurtling back to your younger days?
It really is like stepping into a time machine,
Yeah.
but
Well,
only for your
well,
emotions.
exactly.
Well, that's nostalgia.
And today,
And today we're going to dive deep into its fascinating history.
way beyond just those warm, fuzzy feelings, right?
Yeah, what's really intriguing is how nostalgia has transformed over the centuries. We'll trace its path
Of
from,
what?
believe it or not, a Dudley
Okay.
disease
A deadly disease?
to its modern day power, like in
Yeah.
marketing, entertainment, and even politics.
Hold on. A deadly disease? That doesn't sound very warm and fuzzy to me.
It's true. Back in the 1680s, Swiss soldiers stationed far from home were struck by this strange and debilitating ailment.
Hmm.
They called it nostalgia.
So was it just like extreme homesickness, or was there more to it?
Oh, it was rooted in homesickness for sure,
Okay.
but the symptoms went way beyond just missing, familiar sights and sounds. We're talking fainting spells,
Wow.
hallucinations, trouble sleeping,
Hmm.
and this overwhelming yearning for home
Yeah.
that was so intense, some actually believed it could be fatal.
Wow. That's a far cry from, just reminiscing about old times. What did they think was causing this so-called disease?
Well, imagine this. Some doctors blamed changes in atmospheric pressure,
Oh, wow.
while others pointed the finger at the constant clanging of cowbells
Bells.
in the Swiss countryside.
That's a new one. I guess medicine was a bit different back then. But seriously, did they have any effective treatments for this extreme nostalgia?
So the first person to officially call it nostalgia was this 19-year-old medical student named Johannes Hofer.
Okay.
And according to him,
Yeah.
the only guaranteed cure was sending the soldiers back home.
Kind of a no-brainer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing the military wasn't exactly thrilled about that solution.
You're right about that. Losing soldiers meant losing valuable manpower.
Ex-
So they tried all sorts of other remedies, huh?
Oh, yeah, we're talking bloodletting, leeches,
Yeah.
even trying to frighten the nostalgia out of them.
Wow. Talk about extreme measures.
Yeah,
I read that they even went as far as banning certain songs,
absolutely.
like the Ronde of Ash melodies played by Swiss herders,
Right.
thinking they were triggering homesickness.
It's remarkable how much power they attributed to music in either causing or curing this strange affliction.
So how did nostalgia go from a soldier's disease to something we all experience in some form or another?
Well, it gradually spread beyond the military, impacting other groups who were experiencing rapid change and upheaval.
Right.
Think about the Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
That massive shift from rural life to factory work, standardized time, the loss of traditional ways of life,
Right.
all of that contributed to feelings of nostalgia for
Right.
a time that felt simpler and more stable.
It's fascinating how nostalgia often seems to spring from a sense of losing control.
Yeah.
Or yearning for a time when things felt more predictable, more familiar.
Like-
A longing for those good old days, even if they weren't always so good, right?
Absolutely. And that leads us to a crucial
Okay.
and rather disturbing part of the story.
Okay.
There was this misconception at the time
Okay.
that certain groups, specifically enslaved people, were incapable of feeling nostalgia.
Now that you mention it, that does sound pretty troubling. So
Mhm.
they basically believed that enslaved people didn't experience longing for their homes and families.
Just precisely.
Hmm.
White slave owners dismissed the very idea
Wow.
that enslaved people could form deep attachments to their homelands.
Right?
This fed into a dangerous narrative of scientific racism,
Hmm.
the false idea that certain races were inherently different, even on an emotional level.
It's heartbreaking and frankly infuriating how this denial of basic human emotions was used to justify the horrors of slavery.
And that denial manifested in some truly disturbing ways.
Yeah.
Instead of acknowledging the yearning for freedom,
Right.
that was completely natural.
Yeah.
They twisted it into a supposed mental illness. They even invented terms like drapetomania
Oh, wow.
to describe this so-called illness that caused enslaved people to run away.
It's a stark reminder of how easily scientific concepts can be distorted and manipulated to serve harmful ideologies. It's a theme we see repeating throughout history, even today.
And it underscores how our understanding of nostalgia was evolving.
Okay.
As doctors moved away from viewing it as a purely physical disease,
Right.
they started to consider it as a psychological condition, a state of mind,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even a form of melancholy.
This shift in thinking seems to coincide with the rise of Romanticism, a movement that really embraced emotions and sentimentality. Did that have an impact on how nostalgia was perceived?
It absolutely did. Romanticism elevated emotions like longing and yearning, turning nostalgia into a common theme in art and literature.
Okay.
For example, think of William Wordsworth's Lucy poems,
Okay.
where he expresses this deep, almost agonizing longing for a lost love.
It's a beautiful, if somewhat melancholy example of how nostalgia can be a powerful way to explore and express complex emotions.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just about remembering, it's about feeling.
And it wasn't just about individual longing. Nostalgia also fueled a sense of national identity, as we see in Victor Hugo's novel, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Okay.
His romanticized portrayal of the cathedral actually sparked a movement to preserve it,
Wow.
reflecting a broader nostalgia for France's heritage and past glory.
It seems nostalgia can be a real double-edged sword,
Yeah.
capable of inspiring both personal reflection and collective action.
Yeah.
It can be a source of comfort, but also a catalyst for change.
Exactly. And it was around the mid-20th century
Hey.
that psychology began to take nostalgia more seriously, studying it as an emotion in its own right rather than a disease or a passing fad.
That recognition paved the way for nostalgia to move into a whole new arena,
Yeah.
the marketplace. So how did this once feared disease become such a powerful marketing tool?
Well, as the stigma surrounding nostalgia faded,
Right.
marketers realized its potential to
Yeah.
connect with consumers on a deeper level. It's no coincidence that shows like Happy Days, set in the seemingly idyllic 1950s,
Right.
emerged during a time of social and political upheaval in the 1970s.
That makes sense. People crave comfort and familiarity during uncertain times.
Yeah.
It's natural to look back at a time that feels simpler and more stable,
Right.
even if that view is a bit romanticized.
Right. And that yearning for the past turned into a goldmine for marketers. This idea of the nostalgia tale,
Yeah.
where products suddenly experience a resurgence in popularity after a period of decline, became a key marketing strategy.
So are you saying like the comeback of classic cars, vintage clothing, or retro video games?
Exactly.
It's amazing how our emotions can be so effectively channeled by marketing.
Right.
We see it everywhere today.
Yeah.
From the constant stream of reboots and remakes to the resurgence of retro products and fashion trends.
Right.
It's like the past is constantly being repackaged and sold back to us.
And that trend has only intensified in recent years, particularly following major crises like 9/11, the 2008 recession, and the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
Each of these events seemed to trigger a wave of nostalgia, with people seeking solace and stability in the familiar past.
It's almost as if these collective traumas create a longing for a return to simpler times, even if those times were never truly as simple as we remember them.
Exactly. And marketers have become masters at tapping into that vulnerability,
Yeah.
using nostalgia to create a sense of comfort and connection with their brands.
It's clear that nostalgia isn't just a personal feeling anymore. It's become a powerful force that's shaping our cultural landscape.
And its influence goes way beyond entertainment and consumerism.
Oh.
It's also become a potent tool in the world of politics.
Now that's interesting. We've come a long way from cowbells and bloodletting. So how did nostalgia make the leap from a disease to a marketing tactic and now a political strategy? I think our listeners would love to hear more about that.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of nostalgia.
All right.
We've uncovered its curious journey from a disease.
Yeah. To a marketing tool.
Right.
And now we're stepping into the political arena to
Right.
see how this powerful emotion is wielded to sway hearts and minds.
So how exactly does nostalgia, this seemingly personal feeling, become a weapon in the political battleground?
Well, let's think about some of the most memorable political campaigns.
Okay.
What slogans immediately come to mind?
Well, Make America Great Again definitely jumps out.
Right.
It seems like every election cycle, someone is promising to return us to some kind of golden age.
You're right on the money. Make America Great Again is a textbook example of political nostalgia in action.
Okay.
It taps into a longing for a perceived better time,
Right.
a time of strength, prosperity, and unity,
Yeah.
without necessarily pinpointing exactly when that golden age was.
That's a clever tactic.
Right?
It allows voters to project their own idealized version of the past onto the campaign's message, filling in the blanks with their own personal memories and beliefs.
Precisely.
And we've seen this strategy used effectively by politicians like Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, both of whom promised to restore America to a former glory,
Right.
a time when things supposedly ran smoother
Right.
and life was simpler.
But isn't that a bit misleading?
Ah,
I mean, let's be honest. The past is rarely as rosy as we remember it.
right.
There were challenges and injustices back then, just like there are today.
That's the danger of political nostalgia.
Okay.
It often simplifies the past, glossing over the complexities and injustices, and selectively highlighting the positive aspects while downplaying or completely ignoring the negative.
It's a form of manipulation, playing on people's emotions, their desire for security and stability, and their yearning for a simpler time.
Yeah.
But that yearning can be exploited, leading people to make decisions based on an idealized past rather than a realistic assessment of the present.
Absolutely. And it can be incredibly effective.
Okay.
Especially during times of economic hardship, social unrest, or political polarization. Right.
Where people are struggling,
Yeah.
feeling disillusioned, or searching for easy answers. A nostalgic message that promises a return to a more stable and prosperous past can be incredibly appealing.
So it's not just about making people feel good about the past. It's about leveraging those feelings to make them feel better about the present.
Yeah.
Even if it means distorting reality or making promises that can't be kept.
That's a key insight. Political nostalgia often thrives on dissatisfaction with the present.
Okay.
It capitalizes on feelings of loss,
Right.
whether real or perceived,
Okay.
and offers a seemingly straightforward solution.
Okay.
A return to a time when things were supposedly better.
It's a powerful narrative, a simple story that resonates with people who are feeling anxious, uncertain, or left behind.
Right.
But as we've discussed, it's a flawed narrative.
Yeah.
We can't simply rewind the clock,
Right.
and trying to recreate the past often ignores the progress we've made and the lessons we've learned.
The past is gone,
Yeah.
and we can't just turn back the clock.
Right.
And that's where the real danger lies.
Okay.
By fixating on a romanticized past, we risk neglecting the very real challenges of the present and failing to address them effectively.
Right.
We can't solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions.
It's like trying to drive a car while staring in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
You might catch a glimpse of where you've been, but you're likely to crash if you don't keep your eyes on the road ahead.
That's a great analogy. And it's not just about policy.
Okay.
Political nostalgia can also be used to divide people, to create an us versus them mentality.
Right.
By invoking a sense of shared heritage, a common enemy, or a return to a time when we were supposedly better off.
So it's not just about yearning for a better time. It's also about yearning for a better us.
Right.
A return to a time when things were simpler, when people knew their place, and when outsiders weren't threatening our way of life.
Yeah.
But that kind of thinking can be dangerous.
Leading to exclusion, prejudice, and even discrimination.
You're absolutely right. It can fuel a sense of nationalism, often at the expense of others, or it can be used to demonize those who are perceived as different or threatening to the established order. It's a tactic that's been used throughout history to justify all sorts of injustices, from slavery and segregation to xenophobia and religious persecution.
This is pretty sobering stuff.
Right.
It seems like nostalgia, this seemingly harmless emotion, can be a potent weapon in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we can't take anything for granted.
Right.
And we always need to be vigilant against those who might try to exploit our emotions for their own gain.
That's why it's crucial to be aware of how nostalgia is being used, both in our personal lives and in the broader political landscape.
Okay.
We need to be critical thinkers, questioning the narratives presented to us, especially by those in positions of power.
Right.
We need to recognize when our emotions are being manipulated and to be wary of simple solutions to complex problems.
So how do we strike a balance? How do we appreciate the positive aspects of nostalgia, those feelings of comfort and connection?
Right.
While also guarding against its potential pitfalls, the manipulation and distortion that can lead us down a dangerous path?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one we'll tackle in our next segment.
Okay.
We've explored the negative side of nostalgia.
Right.
But as we discussed earlier, it's not inherently a bad thing.
Right. We talked about how nostalgia can provide comfort and connection, especially during times of stress or change.
Yeah.
It can be a source of strength and resilience, reminding us of who we are and where we've come from.
And can be a source of inspiration, reminding us of past successes and fueling our desire to build a better future. It can be a powerful force for good, motivating us to connect with our communities, to fight for justice, to preserve our heritage, and to create a world that's more just, more equitable, and more sustainable.
It sounds like it's not about rejecting nostalgia altogether,
Right.
but about engaging with it thoughtfully,
Exactly.
critically, And with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Exactly.
Right.
We need to recognize that the past is complex with both positive and negative aspects. We need to be aware of how our own personal nostalgia might be influencing our perceptions, our decisions, and our actions.
Okay.
And we need to be especially vigilant
Right.
when others try to use nostalgia to sell us something.
Yeah.
Whether it's a product, a political candidate, or an ideology.
It's about understanding the power of nostalgia, both for good and for ill.
Right.
And learning to use it wisely, both as individuals and as a society. Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
We've been on quite a journey, exploring nostalgia's evolution from a mysterious ailment to a marketing marvel, and even a political tool.
It really has been quite a ride.
But now, let's bring it home. Literally, let's talk about how we, as individuals, can navigate the complex world of nostalgia.
That's right. It's time to shift our focus from the grand historical narratives and societal trends to the individual experience. How can we harness the power of nostalgia in our own lives, embracing the good while sidestepping the potential pitfalls?
Because let's face it, nostalgia is a universal experience. We all have those moments where a song, a scent, or even a certain taste can transport us back in time, evoking powerful emotions and vivid memories.
Absolutely. And there's nothing inherently wrong with indulging in a little nostalgia now and then. As we've discussed, it can be a source of comfort, connection, and even inspiration.
Think about how you feel when you stumble upon an old photo album, rediscover a forgotten box of childhood treasures, or revisit a place that holds special significance from your past.
Yeah.
It's like opening a window to another time, another version of yourself.
Those experiences can be incredibly powerful. They can transport us back to happy times, reminding us of who we are, where we've come from, and the people and experiences that have shaped our lives.
Right.
Nostalgia can strengthen our sense of identity, provide a sense of continuity, and remind us of our resilience in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
It's almost like having a personal time capsule.
Yeah.
A way to access those cherished memories and relive those positive emotions whenever we need a boost.
Right.
And let's be honest, who doesn't need a little boost now and then?
Exactly. And during challenging times, nostalgia can be a powerful coping mechanism. It can offer solace and strength, reminding us of our ability to overcome adversity, navigate difficult situations, and emerge stronger on the other side.
You know, sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, I find myself reaching for my old photo albums or listening to music from my high school days. It's just like a comforting ritual, a way to reconnect with a time when things felt simpler and more carefree.
That's a perfect example of how nostalgia can be a source of comfort and resilience. It's like a warm blanket on a cold night, a familiar scent that brings back happy memories.
Yeah.
A reminder that we've weathered storms before and we can weather them again.
But as we've discussed, it's all about balance.
Right.
Nostalgia can be a powerful force for good, but it can also become a trap if we're not careful.
Exactly.
The problem arises when nostalgia becomes excessive,
Right.
when we dwell on the past to the point that it prevents us from fully engaging with the present or creating a fulfilling future.
You're exactly right. It's like anything else in life, too much of a good thing can be detrimental.
Right.
If we become fixated on a romanticized past,
Yeah.
constantly yearning for something that can't be replicated,
Right.
we risk missing out on the opportunities and experiences that are right in front of us.
It's like trying to live in a museum,
Yeah.
surrounded by beautiful artifacts and relics, but unable to step outside and experience the vibrancy and dynamism of the world as it is now. We might be comfortable in our museum,
Yeah.
but we're not truly living.
That's a great analogy, and that's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
We need to be able to recognize when nostalgia is serving us well, providing comfort, connection, and inspiration.
Yeah.
And when it's holding us back, preventing us from growing, evolving, and embracing new experiences.
So how do we do that? How do we become more mindful of our relationship with nostalgia and ensure that it's a positive force in our lives rather than a source of regret or stagnation?
It starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Pay attention to the things that trigger nostalgic feelings for you. Is it a particular song?
Right.
A scent?
Yeah.
A photograph? A specific place? Once you've identified those triggers, take a moment to examine the emotions they evoke.
Okay.
Are those emotions positive and uplifting?
Right.
Or are they tinged with sadness, regret, or a longing for something you can't have?
That makes sense. It's about being honest with ourselves and acknowledging the full range of emotions that nostalgia can evoke. If we're not careful, we can easily get swept away by those feelings, losing ourselves in a romanticized past that never really existed.
Exactly. And if you find those feelings becoming overwhelming, if they start to interfere with your ability to enjoy the present or plan for the future, it might be a sign that you need to reassess your relationship with nostalgia.
It's also important to remember that we're constantly bombarded with messages and images designed to trigger our nostalgia, whether it's through advertising, political campaigns, or even social media. It's like we're swimming in a sea of nostalgia. And it's easy to get caught in the current.
That's a great point. And it's why media literacy is so important.
Okay.
We need to be aware of the persuasive techniques being used to evoke specific emotional responses. Those heartwarming images of happy families, those catchy jingles from our childhood, those promises of a return to a simpler time. They're all carefully crafted to tap into our nostalgia and influence our behavior.
It's about being savvy consumers. Not just of products and services, but of information and ideas.
Exactly.
We need to question the narratives being presented to us, especially when those narratives are designed to play on our emotions.
Absolutely. And finally, perhaps the most important thing we can do is focus on creating new memories and experiences that will one day evoke positive nostalgia. It's about living a life that's full of joy, connection, purpose, and meaning. A life that will be proud to look back on, even with all its imperfections.
Instead of dwelling on a romanticized past, let's focus on creating a present that we'll be happy to remember.
Exactly.
Let's engage in activities that bring us joy, connect with loved ones, explore new places, pursue our passions, and make a positive impact on the world.
That's the beautiful thing about nostalgia. It's not just about looking back, it's also about looking forward. It's about creating a future that we'll cherish just as much as we cherish the past.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of nostalgia, remember this. The past is a valuable teacher, but it shouldn't be our permanent residence. Embrace the positive aspects of nostalgia. Let it comfort and inspire you, but don't let it become a crutch or a barrier to growth and new experiences.
Live fully in the present, create a future worth remembering, and cherish the memories, both past and future, that make you who you are.
And on that note, we'll leave you with a final thought to ponder. What will your nostalgia be like 10, 20, or even 30 years from now? What memories will you treasure? What experiences will shape your story? The power to create that narrative lies within you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of nostalgia.